What are the keys to victory for the Denver Broncos as they get set to take on the Cincinnati Bengals? Will Vance Joseph's defense have an opportunity to feast against a backup quarterback, or is there a potential trap game waiting in the wings? And which playmakers will shine brightest on both sides for two squads, especially on offense, that have plenty of names to go around? All things to come on today's rundown, but we will begin with a special shout out to our friends at Denver Regenerative Medicine. Guys, if weight loss has been a struggle for you, it's time for something real. At Denver Regenerative Medicine, they use full-strength GLP-1 medications with doctor oversight. You can start today with a free consultation and get real results for under $300 a month. Book now at denverregen.com. And with that, on a Denver Broncos game day here on a Monday, we welcome in our friend of the show and regular Monday guest, NFL insider to the stars, James Palmer, joining us once again. James, how are you?
I'm good, Richie. What's happening? What'd you do on Sunday with no Broncos game?
You know what? I had this conversation with Josh Dover. I filled in on the midday show with him on Friday, and I said, you know what? I love when the Broncos are playing in prime time, or even honestly when there's a bye week, because it allows me to experience football in a much more pure, like, fan traditional sense. I'm obviously trying to watch and glean things from the other matchups and the other teams, but on a Broncos game day, it's just business. Pre-game, I've got a certain mentality, and then the whole game I'm taking notes. My girlfriend and my family hate watching Broncos games with me because I'm scribbling stuff, I'm typing on my phone, I'm tweeting, I'm marking down down and distance timestamps so I can go back and rewatch. They're like, you're no fun.
It's not fun, Richie. It's not fun anymore.
So this past Sunday was great. I got up, I caught some of the early game. I had the quad box going on the 11 a.m. slate with some fun games, and then it ended with a little bit of a dud there with a tie on Sunday Night Football. But other than that, I mean, Baltimore, Kansas City was fun, so fun for one side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
imagine playing.
I picked that outcome, so it's fun for me.
Okay, let's do this. Let's play a little scenario here.
Okay.
They finished that game without their 5 highest paid players.
Wow.
Take the 5 highest paid players on Denver and try playing a game.
Yeah, they're not. They're fighting to be in the AP top 25 in college.
Yeah,
they are.
I mean, that's rough. I mean, it was their best defensive play. I mean, second best defensive player probably. These are their biggest cap hits because Kyle Hamilton's a big number there. But he's still playing. But like Ronnie Stanley and Lamar. And it just went on and on. Marlon Humphrey, it was just
everything.
It's a difficult spot. I think that game transforms the AFC.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things where 2 months ago, if you had said that one of the Ravens and the Chiefs is going to go through the first month of the season at 1-3, I would have given you whatever dollar amount you requested that would not be the case. And I mean, you're looking at, it's the same case applies to the Ravens as it does for the Chiefs, although there was a little bit more desperation, I feel like, in the sense of the Chiefs, because they had just not played well for most of the season thus far. It did not look like anything we'd grown accustomed to. It was very sluggish. And with Baltimore, they still got Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. They still had their playmakers, and it wasn't okay. How much can Mahomes kind of continue to rise this tide, and Rashee Rice being out, and Xavier Worthy gets taken out by his teammate 3 snaps into the NFL season, and all of that. So I'm a big believer in the football gods, and I told myself there is no way that the football gods allow the Kansas City Chiefs to go 1-3 and put them in that deep of a hole. So
it does. It changes things. Certainly. I think it changes things in the AFC West. The AFC West had a big swing, I think, as the Broncos were watching. I mean, I don't think the Chargers should lose that game.
No.
And losing Joe Alt, I mean, I think is a really big deal. It'll be a few weeks, to my understanding, with the high ankle. You saw Herbert kind of under duress a lot in that game. Obviously, the Giants have an outstanding defensive line, and the banged up offensive line plays a part in that. But to me, I went in going in and we've talked about the Chargers on here, and this is relevant to the Broncos. That's why I'm saying it. But we were starting to believe this is a championship pedigree team. This is something Harbaugh's preached. This is something he does my understanding, extra periods on in terms of closing out and winning these games and finding ways to win. Great teams do that. Philly did it again this past week. And Buffalo's done it without even playing great a couple of times. But this was like, is there a chink in a little bit of the armor here? Were we a little quick to throw this out here? So, and then with what the Chiefs did, it also impacts Denver going like the confidence, I think, is just swelled now. I think they're just like, I got a couple texts from inside that building this morning that were like, just wait till Rushy comes back. And what we did in this game was what we thought we were going to be doing week 1 with Saban.
Right.
And he gets knocked out, like you mentioned, a couple plays in. I think the division's a little different, but I think the AFC is a little different. I don't think there's a whole lot of teams above Denver if they win this game.
No, because you look at, I mean, you always talk about, when you talk about the NFL at large, it's like, oh, the big 4, and most of them play in the AFC. All of them play in the AFC. You got Lamar, Josh, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow. Well, Joe Burrow is gone for 3 months, and that's at the best case scenario. So the Bengals are in a little bit of a limbo. Even though I'm a believer that Jake Browning is much better than he looked against Minnesota, and he's been in that system for long enough that there's comfortability and familiarity there.
Yes.
And it certainly helps when you've got a safety net that looks like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, and their collection of skill players. But we'll get into that later. But the Bengals are in flux. The Chiefs have the worst start in the Patrick Mahomes era, and it's not particularly close. The Ravens are now dinged up and sitting at 1-3. And so you're right. There's opportunities to be had. It's whether or not the teams that are in position to strike can take advantage of them. The Chargers did that by going 3-0 in the AFC West and on the season to start. And then they stumble into a team that makes a quarterback change. And just like when you fire a coach or you make a change to a rookie quarterback for whatever reason, there's a little juice and a little bump. And I was joking around with Josh. I said, there's going to be headlines in the New York Post and others that are going to be making bullseye puns and dart puns because it just feels like that's what happens. Now, the Giants and Jackson Dart, who have plenty of issues, could go on to lose the next 4 games.
Of course.
But they won that one, and it happened to be against the AFC West and a contender in the AFC and the Chargers. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think this whole thing is kind of muddied and in limbo, which, as far as the AFC and the AFC West postseason picture, I actually think puts a bit of a microscope on this game specifically for the Denver Broncos. If they are going to be that team that repeats as a wild card contender and gets themselves back in the postseason, you cannot stub your toe the way that the Chargers stubbed their toe against a rookie quarterback making his first start. This is not a rookie quarterback in Jake Browning, nor is he making his first start, but you're getting to play the Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Burrow in primetime at home. I just think this puts a lot more pressure on Denver to not stub their toe and prevent themselves from being a headline tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to remember with this game. You're not going to get the Bengals team that played last week. You're not going to get 5 fumbles out of this team. I would assume. I think they lost 3 of the 5, I want to say. I just don't think that happens again. For them to be successful, they do need everybody to play better around Jake Browning. That's part of this. I have my eye on T. Higgins. Again, the league, people have texted me, hey, I thought Riley Moss was coming around. Like coaches on other teams, like what's the buzz in Denver? Like they're curious, like what's going on? Obviously, that's a spot that Jake Browning's probably going to be looking at. And so you're right. They have an opportunity here. They've been very good at home, like going back to the end of last year. And so I do think they've played well there. This is an opportunity for Bo to get it kind of back together with the defensive front that just hasn't been great. We know how good Trey Hendrickson is individually, but collectively as a defense, they haven't been outstanding. And so if you want to get back to playing on time, and we can get into Bo and get back into what you want to do offensively, I think this is the opportunity to do it. And you're right. We're in a spot where the AFC has kind of shifted a little bit before you even played. And I think that puts you on the national stage now to kind of tell everybody, like, we're part of that upper echelon group. Like, a lot of teams go through the first portion of the season figuring out who they are. Really good teams have done that. In the Brady years, they did that a lot, used September. We've seen, the Chiefs go through that. I remember covering a game with the Chiefs and the Commanders several years back, and Tyrann Mathieu throwing his helmet across the entire field before halftime. because they were giving up more yards per play than any team we've ever seen in NFL history. And then they went on to win the Super Bowl that year. We've seen Philly have their struggles early on in this year, even though they're 4-0, but they haven't put together a complete game. And the Broncos, for all of their issues with, some of the special teams issues, some of the key points where your quarterback needs to make a throw and ends up not keeping your offense on the field or whatever it is, you're still 2 game-winning field goals at the end of the game to being, 3-0 heading into this game. So I think you've shown you can be part of that group, but people just over the last week or 2 weeks has started to kind of question that a little bit. I had this insane stat to show you where Denver is. Like, there were 68 teams, I think dating back to like 2000, that have not trailed in the fourth quarter of their first 3 games. 64 of the 68 ended up being 3-0. Wow. Denver's the only team that was in 2 losses out of those 3.
Wow.
Out of all of those, the other 2 are 2-1, if I do my math right. The other one was the Packers, right? Who ended up losing that game to Cleveland. So they're right there, and this is the opportunity to kind of show everybody we're part of that group right here, and we're not part of the group that has a lot of question marks that's below that group.
James, if you were putting a headset on alongside Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, you experienced what you experienced last week with the Minnesota game. That was just one of those things that was over before it started. They had like a pick 6 very early in the game, and
Isaiah Rodgers, man.
And then the 5 turnovers that you mentioned, 5 fumbles. If you were Zach Taylor going into a hostile environment on the road in primetime with a backup quarterback and a team that just took a pretty significant licking, but you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Chase Brown, and you have offensive weapons even at the tight end position that can win their matchups and get open on a pretty consistent basis. How aggressive would you be in that spot if you were Cincinnati? Do you take it as you're the underdog by a significant measure? You're on the road. You've got nothing to lose. Your starting quarterback, one of the best in the league, went down. Or do you expect there to be some conservative nature to how Cincinnati approaches this game, given the fact that Denver's offense hasn't exactly lit the world on fire, and you may not have to go out of your way to try to set the scoreboard on fire?
Yeah, I don't think I'm like overly aggressive downfield. I think I'm getting the ball out of my quarterback's hands really quickly and into my playmakers' hands. I think that helps you against this pass rush. That helps you get it to 2 receivers that win consistently early in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think the name you keep mentioning to me has been shocking. Is Chase Brown's been terrible.
Yeah.
Like it's just been really bad. I mean, like he's got a boatload of carries and he's averaging like 2 yards or under that, like a carry. It's so inability to run the ball has been an issue. So I'm looking at like, can I use their aggressiveness against them? I know they want to get downfield. A lot of times, and you even have to do this as a defensive line coach. And I bet you Vance Joseph has done it too as a DC, where it's like, hey, they got some issues up front. Don't get burned with the over aggressiveness. Try to sniff out some of these screens. Try to sniff out some of this quick game, because I wouldn't be surprised if we see Cincinnati go and like, let's use this over pursuit, over aggressiveness, guys that are hitting the quarterback like crazy and pressuring the quarterback like crazy, which is things that this front is doing, and try to use that to our advantage. Can we get this group to come in and throw these little in routes that are real quick to our bigger receivers who we know their yards after the catch can be outstanding, right? Like, how can we kind of utilize some of the strengths of this Denver defense and maybe try to take advantage of some of those? I don't know if I'm going overly aggressive downfield, just because I'm going to get my backup quarterback killed probably. I mean, I think there's that aspect of it as well. But I do want to get it into both of these guys' hands as much as possible. And the rest of the receiver group and pass catchers aren't terrible either. And so I maybe take advantage of the linebacker issue on the inside that's been a part of Denver's defense. But I do know that this is a fast group that I'm playing against that has a couple of really high IQ type guys. So the ball's got to get out of my quarterback's hands pretty quickly.
Well, along those same lines, I don't know exactly why it's taken place this year, but it does feel like the narrative or approach from an offensive perspective in terms of managing and going after Patrick Surtain has changed year over year. The statistic for Patrick Surtain was always that he just eliminated that side of the field. It was like staggering to look at the numbers of receptions versus targets, versus production for some of the best receivers in the league, including Jamar Chase. But that seems to have flipped. We've seen definitely the last two, but just in general, in the first 3 weeks of the season, we've seen teams not afraid to go after the reigning defensive player of the year in their pass game and put their best player one-on-one. Jamar Chase certainly fits into that category. Do you expect that trend to continue from Jake Browning to Jamar Chase? Or, given the fact that on the other end, you have Riley Moss, who's one of the most off-targeted DBs in the National Football League through 3 weeks, and also has an exploitable matchup with T. Higgins. Which cornerback do you think is in for the biggest workload going into tonight's game?
I think there's a couple things at play here. I thought it was an interesting comment from Vance Joseph saying, we've been funneling things towards Pat, which I do get. He's a playmaker. You want to try to get your playmakers to make plays and make game-changing type of plays, and Pat has that ability, certainly. But I look at it and go, T. Higgins is a number one on how many teams besides the team he's a number two on. Like there's a lot of teams he'd be a one. He'd be the one on the Broncos.
Absolutely.
He'd be their number one wide receiver on the Broncos. And so that's a really, really favorable matchup. I also think my true number one, who is the Triple Crown winner, who, by the way, everybody watching tonight, this has never happened in the history of the NFL. The reigning Triple Crown winner going up against the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. That's never happened in the history of the league. So super fun. Get your popcorn. Enjoy. But I do think Jamar's skill set matches up really well against Pat. I think Pat likes playing bigger receivers. I think he likes playing physical receivers. He's a bigger corner himself. And so, I was talking to somebody, a receiver coach, about this with another. We had a variety of topics we were discussing, but Surtain came up and I was asking him, and he was like, listen, he's the best corner in the league, and I don't think it's close, but his skill set doesn't match up perfectly against every type of receiver. Right? A lot of these smaller guys that are really quick in and out of stuff, like Pat's longer, and it's to his advantage oftentimes, but he was like, he probably has an advantage over every receiver he's going against, right? Probably. But that advantage varies by the skill set of the receiver he's playing. And I think Chase's stuff, he matches up really, really well against a bigger body guy. And I went back and I looked at, the numbers from 2024, because I knew we'd talk about this and I prepared for this show and I really care about it. He had 36 routes with Surtain in coverage last year. 6 targets, 3 receptions, 27 yards. Against everybody else, 24 routes, 9 targets, 6 catches, 75 yards. Now, a lot of things that Denver does changes. If you remember that game, right, Pat was lined up in front of him for a number of those and then ended up dropping off and changing, and they ended up shifting and moving. And Pat actually wasn't the primary defender for a handful of routes. I think of he had 60 routes. I think Pat lined up in front of him on 43, 36. He was actually in coverage. And so I'm probably going to T. That's probably where I'm going. The size advantage, you know what I mean? All of it. And I think you go, where's my biggest advantage? It's T over Riley.
No, I agree with you. I think that has been the case. That was certainly the case last year when the two teams played in their little primetime shootout.
Yeah.
And Riley Moss was kind of rushing back from injury, which certainly contributed to the long day that he had at the hands of T. Higgins, and to a certain degree from Jamar Chase as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last question I have for you from a playmaker perspective. I don't know if it's more of a question or like an APB, but I want to know if we're going to get an Evan Engram game, if we're going to get an Evan Engram sighting game. It feels like a primetime matchup, because we know how much Sean loves playing in primetime, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's been saving specific wrinkles on offense specifically for this game in the first month of the season, because we know, as evidenced by the fact that he flexed his team into a secondary Thursday night road game to play more in primetime, that's something that's in Sean's bag. But it's also against a defense that historically has been the main thing holding Cincinnati back from sustained postseason success. That and maybe Joe Burrow injuries and an offensive line that gets him hit all the time. But the defense has been certainly a subject of conversation. Sean Payton was asked about Evan Engram's his role on the offense and the importance of having a dynamic tight end earlier this week. And he said, there are certainly matchups, third down and red zone, that come to mind. With him on the field, we're a better offense. Well, James, I hear that, but then I look at the numbers and I say that Evan Engram has been on the field for less than 40% of the offensive snaps. He has certainly not had from a production standpoint, start to the season that many would have hoped. And there's been some lingering health issues to start the season and things of that nature. So, James, is tonight the night? Is tonight the night that we get an Evan Engram sighting with a clean bill of health by NFL standards? He's a full participant for multiple days, and he still does possess the title of the Joker within Sean Payton's offense and that chess piece that he loves to move around the board. It hasn't materialized itself yet. Do you think it materializes itself tonight against the Cincinnati defense that hasn't necessarily stricken the fear that that others that the Broncos will face has done?
I think it should. I think we've all been waiting. I think you had the extra time to critique what's gone right and wrong with your offense and some of the issues that you've had. I think with what's going on with your quarterback, hitting your tight end and a pass-catching tight end that has put up the numbers that Evans put up in the past, which are like insane numbers in terms of catches in years past, like that's a get back on track player, right? That's a get your quarterback right type of player. We haven't seen it. You're right. I think it's been a part of this offense that was in camp. In camp, it was being prepared to be a larger part of your offense, and you haven't seen it. I think it's a little bit part of of how they've sputtered offensively. And I think you have the opportunity that, like, it hasn't worked. Use advantage of some of the things that nobody's seen yet for some reason, whether it's health or whatever it is, that you put him in these spots, specifically third down and red zone, which is huge moments for him, which throughout the course of his career have been that. And you have the ability to stay on the field and the ability to find some easy targets. I think you need to do that, specifically if you have a banged up Marvin Mims and you're looking on the outside, not the same way as you maybe would have been, and you change the way you're going to be using your formations a little bit. Will help. Sean changes formations every play, it seems like, but in your position groupings and your personnel groupings. But like, I do think this is the type of game where you want to accomplish a couple of things. I want to get my quarterback right. He's almost like moving too fast. Let him get some easy throws where he's not throwing off platform all the time, just like a drop and rhythm, rock and go. And then at the same time, show the rest of the league that there's another part of our offense that you need to study for on film. And I think when you're on national television, that's an easier spot to do it as well.
Well, we're not on national television currently, James, but to the 900 plus people that are watching us live right now,
hey,
give me your prediction and your key to victory for the Denver Broncos right now if they're going to get it done at home in prime time.
Sustaining drives, I think, is a big one. I think that needs to be something that's harped upon. I think you need to run the ball well. I really do. We can't in a game like this. You shouldn't rely on connecting a couple shot plays. I know they've missed them, but I think you can beat a team like this without having to rely on those. So I think they'll get home I don't have a concern much up front getting home defensively, making them one-dimensional. I don't have a concern there. I think you have to capitalize if you're in the secondary for sure, because Jake Browning is going to give you some opportunities. Mm-hmm. Like, he is going to give you some opportunities to get a turnover or two, and you gotta find a way to make those. But offensively, I think you have to find a balance. You have to find a rhythm with your quarterback, and that's not just for today. That's for moving forward. I think there's some people that are questioning, where this is headed and which direction. And we're doing that with all of these young quarterbacks, by the way. Like everybody's ready. Are you benching Michael Penix last week? And then they come out this week and play well. Like, Caleb Williams is off again to the worst number one pick ever. Now he's strung together a couple of games, and Bryce Young's been like this, and so we're kind of evaluating all of these guys, and I think there's a lot of positive things to like about his game. And when I ask around the league, it's kind of like, and I wrote this down, it was kind of like playing way too fast, He's looking at one guy, trying to throw everything on the run, which I think everybody can kind of see. So get simple, like get in rhythm and stay on the field. And I think Evan can help that. And I think running the ball can help that.
Yeah, I totally agree. My if I was to give one singular ask, or I suppose you could call it a key to victory for this Broncos team, it would be this offense needs to throw the first punch for me. We have seen it's been a hallmark of Sean Payton's tenure here with Russ and with Bo now over multiple seasons. They just start off slow. And consequently, you could argue that slow start and that really long ramp up period to get things rolling is what's put enough strain on the defense to have to hold out for as long as they can. And then they bend and bend and bend, and they finally break, and they break on a final drive that allows you to get walked off for 2 consecutive weeks against a backup quarterback at home in prime time when you've had an extra day or so to prepare. I think Sean Payton's offense needs to get out on the field and make a statement early and put a team who's already reeling from injury to their star quarterback on their heels even further, which will in turn, instead of the defense walking the dog the way they have for 3 consecutive weeks, they will then get to pin their ears back and get to do what they do best, which is bring pressure and blitz and Vance Joseph scheme with the talent that they have, especially up front. And I think I think that's what happens. I feel like that's not the safest bet for me, betting on a fast start from Sean Payton's offense. But I think if it was going to happen, it happens under the parameters that exist tonight. And I think the Broncos are 7.5-point favorites. I feel like if they don't cover a 7.5 number here, they may not hit it the remainder of this season. And so I do think the Broncos will win by 2 scores. I could see it being 31-20.
You know what? What I would really love to come out of this game is that I leave Monday night and I go, that's the identity of Denver's offense.
Ooh, that would be great.
I would like to have that question answered tonight. Like, okay, now I see it. Like, I get some of the ideas and some of the concepts that Sean's looking for in the 2-back set, and it's kind of like Engram and Kamara, or what was it, Pierre Thomas and what's his
Chris
name?
Ivory or
Sproles. It was like
Sproles,
like Pierre Thomas and Sproles. Like, okay, I get some of the things we're looking at, but like, all right, what's our identity as an offense? Getting Bo comfortable and in rhythm early and figuring that out early. And maybe, I would love for that to happen out of this game. That's the number one thing I would like.
Well, we are very, very close to finding out. We're just hours away from kickoff here. James, zooming out, I would say, to a more macro perspective of the NFL, because we all know that you cover it all. You're not, we're fortunate to have you here in town and the close eye that you're able to keep on the Broncos. But which needles moved the most significantly for you around the entire league after, I guess, Thursday and mostly Sunday's slate of action?
I think there's obviously, we covered it, real concern in Baltimore for sure. And I think that goes beyond the injuries. I think 2 years in a row now, we've seen Dean Pease come in last year to help out on this defense. Then we have Chuck Pagano come in to help out on this defense this year. There's some rumblings around the league. Like, do these players, do they understand what Zach Orr wants? Are they playing what Zach Orr wants? Is there some sort of issue in terms of what their defensive coordinator and that group is meshing together? I think that's definitely one of them. There's another one that there's like this unbelievable confidence in Kevin O'Connell that it'll just work, right? Like he just has it, and he does. Like when he interviewed for the Broncos job, he blew them away, and I think it was his first interview ever for a head coaching gig, and he just blew them away. But he has put a Super Bowl roster, essentially, or Super Bowl contending roster, in the hands of a he's not a rookie, but a quarterback that's never played. And we were all like not panicking the offseason. Did you notice that? Everybody like,
yeah,
it's going to work.
It was very calm.
It's going to work. And I'm like, I look back at it now and I go like, what? I guess we were all that way because Kevin has done it, and what he did with Sam Darnold last year when everybody had written him off. And you know what I mean? It's like, I think there is concern in Minnesota because it's like, there's this like middle spot where it's like, maybe we were all just a little too confident it was going to work. And now he's hurt and off the field again. I think the hope is that he runs the scout team offense this week, to my understanding, and maybe gets back. But those ones stand out to me. And then I don't know if Jacksonville's for real. And then I'll bring this up because I've talked to people around the league about this, and this ties into here in Colorado. Like, there's definitely people that are like, there's some I told you so type people out there that are like, this playing both ways, Travis Hunter, I told you it wasn't going to work. There's a lot of that going on around the league. Now, I will say that's because there's a lot of people in the league that refuse to change. And they're like,
right.
They're old, they're steadfast, they love comps. Who's this guy? They don't like anybody outside the box. They don't like anybody different. And that's one of the things I don't like about the league. But it's looking like it's very difficult to do. Like, this is really hard to do. He's not really impacting the game on either side of the ball. And I don't know if you can continue to get 3 or more turnovers in every single game. Like, I don't know if that's sustainable. And Liam Cohen is not really fixed. Trevor Lawrence yet. I'll give it some time. This offense is very complicated, but they're 3-1. I mean, I think that's something to be, to be said. And then I think Seattle's the real deal. Like, Seattle's really good. Seattle's really good. And there's some concern in San Fran. But yeah,
James, I thought they looked better with Mac Jones than they did with Brock Purdy. Legitimately,
I think the sense is Brock's still hurt, and I think he saw that with the way he sailed balls. I mean, this is
so many overthrows.
Yeah,
overthrows.
This seems like it was the foot related to it. Like,
he's just not able to plant properly, and
it's unbelievably painful. Or they shot up his foot and he doesn't feel anything on his entire foot. Like, that might be hard to plant off of. It just doesn't seem right. And then the injuries are just seem to mount for them. And they're a completely different defense without Nick Bosa. I think that was part of what we saw as well. So, I mean, I also, one thing I'd like to bring up, I think the Rams bounced back great from a heartbreaker in Philly.
Yep.
And Puka's the best receiver in football.
He is something fierce. I will tell you that. Well, you hit on Travis Hunter, which I share your sentiments. I think that at some point the conversation is going to be had about whether or not you're doing, if you're Travis Hunter, not just a detriment to yourself, but a detriment to your. Yes. Yeah, and I was buckled in and along the ride for every game here in Colorado that he was here. It was a spectacle. It was amazing. It was like nothing we'd ever seen before. And I appreciate someone going out of their way to try to chase and make history in their own name.
Yep.
But I do think there's a potential conversation approaching where it's like, Travis, you're not just maybe necessarily doing a detriment to yourself, but like the team, we as a team who invested in you are worse with this path or this plan of action than we would be otherwise.
Yeah. Who would have thought that, like, I mean, it's early, but you could say like the Browns won this trade. Like, you look at this draft class that Cleveland put together. I don't know why you picked 2 quarterbacks. I don't know. Maybe because Shador didn't want to go to Baltimore. Hey, Shador would have been playing in Kansas City yesterday.
Yeah.
If he would have went to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Now he's got to wait behind Dylan Gabriel before he get on the field in Cleveland. But I digress. You gave up like quarterback capital to get Travis Hunter. Like that, like legitimately, like some serious capital. And what did Cleveland do? They, to my understanding, they loved him, but they didn't know how to really use him both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's them being very honest with themselves and being like, I don't know if we can do this. What can we do? Okay, let's trade back. And the Graham kid from Michigan's been awesome. I think Judkins, they got him out of that, one of the extra picks, and he's been outstanding. The tight end kid's been really good. The Fannin player out of Bowling Green, and like, so they have an extra pick as they look at quarterbacks in next year's draft. Like, you gave up quarterback capital for Travis Hunter, and you're getting number 2, 3 type receiver play, and like your second, third, your nickel corner type play. I don't know if that's worth the capital you gave up right now. Again, it's early, but it's not.
The last question I have here for you, James, was on a player that you just touched on that certainly resonates here locally, which is Shedeur Sanders. The Browns have their game yesterday. Mm-hmm. Things are not going the direction I think that they internally within the building would hope, but certainly potentially even within the building where one might expect. And it feels like we just saw the Giants make a change to Jackson Dart. They invested significant capital in a rookie quarterback. it feels like there's less and less excuses for the Cleveland Browns, or barriers in front of the Cleveland Browns, to start moving in that direction. Conventional wisdom would say that they would turn the reins over to Dylan Gabriel, and then Shedeur would get his chance. James, how close are we to the quarterback door starting to spin in Cleveland this season?
Yeah, here's what I'll tell you that I know. I think a change is coming. I don't know if it's coming this week. I think if you watch that game, I did, some of that stuff's not on Flacco. They're just not a good offense. Jerry Jeudy just gets the defensive back just climbs over his back and takes the ball. You can't have your receiver play that way. That's not on Flacco. There was another play with Jeudy that I was like, this isn't on Flacco. This is a drop. There's drops, there's issues. And I think I'm concerned that Kevin Stefanski goes, this will look even worse with one of these rookies. You know what I mean? This will look even worse, because there's little things that Joe does that, and I'm not saying he's the best quarterback in the NFL by any stretch, you know what I mean? But little things at the line, little things that a rookie just doesn't know yet.
He's a former Super Bowl champion with more than a decade of experience across
100%.
5-6 different teams.
There were a couple throws in there. I don't know did you watch it? There were a couple throws in there where he's just getting lit up and throws it on a dime. And I'm just he can still do some of those things. But I do know they need to see these guys. And I know Gabriel's next. I know they think he's definitely much more ready. They thought during camp, Dylan Gabriel is good enough to play snaps this season, and that hasn't changed. Now, with Shedeur, that sentiment wasn't the same there. They just knew there was much more of a learning curve. But if I'm Jimmy Haslam, I might be coming down and being I need to see these guys play. We have 2 first-round picks next year. I need to see if the quarterback's on this roster or it's another roster. The part that makes me laugh, honestly, is you guys ran Baker Mayfield out of town.
Number 1 overall pick. And he's done since leaving you is succeed.
And you ran him out of town. And I remember covering games that last year Baker was there in Cleveland. And there was a lot going on. There was people in the building that loved him. There was people in the building that hated him. I think Baker's polarizing. I think some of his pass catchers, you can go back and check the roster, had too big of a say in that locker room because they weren't Baker fans. I think with this defense and the group of rookies that I just mentioned around him, I'm curious what Cleveland would look like right now with Baker Mayfield at quarterback.
He's the only quarterback in recent history to bring them to any semblance or hope of postseason success. He helped his coach win Coach of the Year at the time, and yes, he had the weird stopgap in Carolina where he's on a roster with Sam Darnold, who's in the same kind of washing machine as him, but he goes to the Los Angeles Rams, and less than 48 hours after arriving, helps them win a Thursday night football game. He goes to Tampa Bay on a 1-year prove-it deal, and he's had them on the doorstep of an NFC championship game multiple times, taking over for Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Who was only there
talking about big shoes to fill, but a guy with a chip on his shoulder that would just love that experience. I think it's funny, and it's funny we're on this little mini Baker Mayfield tirade here, but I think it's hilarious that it's if you remember when Dave Canales got the job and how's Carolina doing right now, and it was, if you can do this with Baker and make him successful, what could he do with our number 1 pick, Bryce Young? And then you go to Liam Cohen, and he goes, we got to get Liam Cohen with Trevor Lawrence. If he can do this with Baker, what could he do for Trevor Lawrence? It's you know what, guys? Maybe Baker just got both these guys jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
By playing well. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you guys should flip it a little bit.
Yeah, no, and that goes back to the quarterback versus coaching credit. That was the Belichick and Brady argument, and was it Shanahan or was it Elway? And the truth is always somewhere in the middle, and it takes a village and all of that. But you won't find a card carrying member of the Baker Mayfield fan club that's got more hole punches than me, man.
Really? I didn't even know that. We went down this little rabbit hole here.
I love Baker Mayfield. I just he's just got that competitive edge, that moxie, the swagger, and again, talking about a guy who achieved the pinnacle, had it all ripped from him because of some of the same dysfunction that someone like Shedeur was willing to opt into instead of landing with him. Or I think if you gave Baker Mayfield that choice, I think Baker Mayfield's going to Philly or to Baltimore and just saying, I'll beat out whoever's there.
100%.
That's
That's
what
his
it takes.
mentality. That's his mentality his whole life. And I think Lincoln Riley did a part of that. And I think you look at the way he's wired. I was talking to some people in Philly this morning, just kind of trying to figure out what's going on with the offense. But somebody was like, dude, the guy's for real. And Bucky Irvin is certainly for real. And they were like, dude, he's a nuisance to play against. Like, Baker will never go away, ever. Like, you're never out of a game. He never thinks you're out of a game. Like, he doesn't go away. I think Bo can have a little bit of that to him. Don't you think? Like,
oh, that would be great.
I think he does have a little bit of it. And Baker's has always been there, maybe more so than most people, but it's grown too. Like, actually, the more people that wrong him, the better he plays.
He keeps the ledger.
But there is something about your quarterback leading you, and I think we've seen some of that fire from Bo from time to time on the sideline. And I don't think people understand like how that galvanizes a group. Like, he had to win, like you mentioned, over a Tom Brady locker room. And I love that they told him to be himself, and guys gravitated towards him. And one of the guys in Philly I was talking to was just like, dude, they have so much belief in themselves because Baker tells them he believes in them. Like, that you can see it through the whole unit. I'm curious if that's something Bo can grow with, like a little bit of that edge.
I am too, because I'll agree with you. Bo clearly has a competitive fire. I mean, everyone highlights the altercation with Sean Payton on the sideline where they're barking at each other and snapping over this. But Bo Nix went, basically face mask to face mask with Max Crosby and said, I'm not scared of you. You know what I mean? Yeah. As a rookie going up against one of the best pass rushers, in the NFL. And I think that he has a maturity and a wisdom and a drive about him that makes all of those things that you mentioned possible. But I just think that there is a mental cloud, it seems like, with him right now. And I don't know if it's self-imposed, like he's trying to outdo his own rookie season and he's feeling weight and pressure and gravity on him to try to carry the mantle of being the Broncos franchise quarterback and doing too much or pushing too hard. But I do think that when things are at its simplest, when you're running, a 2-minute offense, a 4-minute offense, and it's, hey, check and go, and the thinking is taken out of it, I still think, and we've seen glimpses of it this season, that's when the purest form of Bo Nix has come through, and not the off-platform, awkward body angle, trying to play hero ball, which, I mean, even some of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL, Josh Allen, had the hero ball, narrative stuck to him still to this day at times, because he's so physically capable of doing all that much. He has the superpowers. It's just about knowing when to use them.
Yeah, what does he do constantly? Like, I was probably one of the coolest parts of Hard Knocks. Like, he has all those superpowers, and all he does is spend all of his time on making the same throwing motion over and over again, making sure his body's right, making sure his feet are right, his torso's right, everything's right to become. And he has the biggest change in accuracy in the history of the league from coming in to where he's at now. And Mahomes does the exact same thing. All he ever does is focus on footwork all the time. He knows he can do that other stuff. But how do I make sure I don't get into that stuff? It's almost like Bo's got to get back a little bit to the mundane, because I think part of what makes him, I think, a good quarterback, he's a football player. Like, some of these guys that play quarterback are not football players. Bo's a football player. He's an athlete. Like, he's physical. He can do all those things. But the people I've talked to around the league are just kind of like, it feels like he's playing way too fast, like just way too fast. And I don't know if that's, upstairs it's playing way too fast, and then, he's not setting himself. And I'm not worried about it, because I think he has a great, you just talked about the coach and the quarterback. I think there's a good synergy there between the play caller and the guy running it and the guy who spends every day with him, and Davis. Like, I think there's a good infrastructure around him. But I do think there's part of that. He doesn't look comfortable to some people I've talked to. Like, he doesn't look as comfortable as he did last year. But that could be you're putting more out there. But that also means, like, it's a lot of new around him. Like, and so I think the line's playing well. I think he just needs to, and play. Just like you said, think less, play. And I think he'll be better for it. And I think some of those other intangibles, Sean really, really likes about him. I think some of that fire, some of that other things, some of that moxie, like chip on his shoulder type stuff. I think when he starts building this year, I think some more of that'll come out.
James, the Broncos and the Bengals kick off later tonight. And then after that, they head out for a date with the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Over under 1.5 more cryptic tweets from AJ Brown between today and when the Broncos and the Eagles play 2 weekends next weekend.
He usually is good for just one. Like, he'll let it marinate. He's not an active social media individual. I think he's going to let this one marinate a little bit. I mean, it's hard. Like, literally, it's hard to have 0 passing yards in a half. And that's what they had in the second half. They had 0 passing yards.
James, that's like stat lines that we used to talk about during the Tim Tebow era.
Yeah.
Where they win a game with 2 completions or something.
It's unreal. But, like, if you look at it, he barely could throw an incompletion in the first half. Like, he torched Todd Bowles' blitz, which has given Jalen Hurts tons of fits. And he destroyed it. And they were doing whatever they wanted to do offensively. They're running tush-push wrinkles now. The play.
I loved the fake tush-push outside handoff.
I thought it was great.
I'm not a big – I've kind of soured a little bit on the tush-push as a whole. But if you're telling me it's a formation that you're going to run more stuff out of now and it's not just this guaranteed nosedive forward and all that, suddenly I'm like, well, hold on. Like, how do we get a play-action boot from that low of a crouch in a tush push?
I loved it. I love that Sirianni said after the game, he was just like, it's an exciting play now, isn't it? Is it exciting enough for you guys? Which was one of the things that everybody in the league is kind of complaining about, that it's not entertaining.
Yeah.
I think when you get to Philly, obviously, that defense specifically is playing outstanding. Like, you take away the 2 explosives that Baker had, and again, you can't take anything away from him, but they were like blown coverages by some youngsters on that defense. He had like 200 some, like 212 of total offense. Like, it's a really good defense, and I'm excited to see that Philly interior defensive line go against this Broncos offensive line that I think is playing pretty good. Like, so I just think it is going to be tough in the middle. They're really, really, really athletic. But man, like, hopefully Lane Johnson's healthy if you're just a football fan.
Yeah.
Like, and you get to see this defensive line against that defensive line. I like Nick Bonito trying to go around the edge and Jonathan Cooper around the other. Like, it's going to be really fun. Zach Allen working against those guys. Like that to me, for football nerds, like, if that Eagles offensive line and this Broncos defensive line is going to be a whole lot of fun.
I can't wait. I can't wait for that, but we got to get through tonight first. And so, James, I appreciate you joining us as you do every Monday. I look forward to our chats every single week, and we will catch up again. Of course, come on. Oh. I have a pre-made intro for you.
I know. You're the only one at the network that does it.
That's right. Well,
it's Mike Evans to figure out something
exactly.
else.
They'll catch on. I'll talk to him. But thank you again, and we will talk to you a week from today with plenty more on the NFL docket to get to. Thank you very much, my friend.
Sounds good, brother.
Appreciate it. To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your Monday afternoon. We will catch you tomorrow at noon for the next rundown. I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.